Does it ever feel like you're a marketing professional just speaking into the void? Well, with LinkedIn ads, you can know you're reaching the right decision makers. You can even target buyers by job title, industry, company, seniority, skills. Wait, did I say job title yet? Get started today and see how you can avoid the void and reach the right buyers with LinkedIn ads. We'll even give you a $100 credit on your next campaign. Get started at linkedin.com/results. Terms and conditions apply.
I'm ready for my life to change.
ABC Sunday, American Idol returns.
Give it your all, good luck, come out the golden ticket.
Let's hear it.
This is a man's world.
I've never seen anything like it.
And a new chapter begins.
We're going to Hollywood!
Carrie Underwood joins Lionel Richie, Luke Bryan, and Ryan Seacrest on American Idol. Season premiere Sunday, 8/7 Central on ABC and stream on Hulu.
When the game tips off, the NBA action is just beginning on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Because FanDuel is your home for NBA live betting. However you want to play, now is the perfect time to join. Make every moment more with FanDuel, official sports betting partner of the NBA. 21 plus and present in Virginia. First online, real money wager only. $5 first deposit required. Bonus issued is non-withdrawable bonus bets which expire 7 days after receipt. Restrictions apply. See terms at sportsbook.fanduel.com. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER.
Welcome to the Paddock and The Pavilion, the podcast that brings you the best of horse racing and cricket. I'm your host, Stephen Wallis. Today it's all about cricket as we reflect on the England women's team's crushing Ashes defeat down under. To break it all down, I'm joined by 4 expert voices: Rosa Simkin of Rosa Talks Ball, Worcestershire's Chloe Hill, former England all-rounder Kathryn Leng, and current German international Tina Gough. Together we analyse what went wrong for England, discuss the key issues that emerged in Australia and debate what needs to change, starting with the roles of head coach Jon Lewis and captain Heather Knight. Join us for this hard-hitting episode as we examine the future of England women's cricket. Hello Rosa and Chloe. Yes, 2 guests for our Women's Ashes review.
Hello, you're right.
I'm very well, thank you, Chloe. You must be cold at the moment. You're fresh back from Dubai.
Yeah, I can't confirm that I'm enjoying this lovely English weather right now.
And Rosa,
can confirm.
Whereas Rosa's been in the cold, just finished her mock examinations.
Yeah, it's definitely not the kind of weather you want to be sitting in an exam hall for, but I can feel it getting a little bit warmer. So hopefully, as the season approaches, it gets a little bit brighter.
Yeah, it is a bit brighter, isn't it? Although Chloe's saying it's been raining today in Buckinghamshire.
Yeah, raining all day today. Took the dogs out on a walk and it was horrible.
Okay, well, we've got 2 other guests as well today. We've got Tina Gough, a regular contributor to the Paddock and the Pavilion, the German all-rounder, and Kathryn Leng, former England batter and leg spinner. We've got a lot to get through, and I know that Rosa is ready to go. Firstly, actually, I'll start with you, Rosa. You said it was going to be wow, watch competitive, the Ashes. What do you say to that?
I would say that I've been let down. I think it's been a pretty disappointing result, especially given how breathtaking it was last time out when it was over here.
It certainly wasn't wow watch competitive though, was it?
It was definitely the polar opposite, yeah. I think it is probably the most uncompetitive series of cricket I've ever seen, which is quite a bold statement, but it was, well, in effect, a steamrolling from Australia.
Chloe, you went for a 10-6 England win.
Yeah, I think I was just being slightly optimistic for England, where deep down I probably should have just backed Australia from the start.
Yeah, I think you weren't the only one because Tina was optimistic. She went for a 10-6 England victory, whereas Sue Strachan went for an Australia 10-6 victory. John Aaron, the manager of the USA women's under-19 team, went for the Australians, and Yaz Daswani from Hong Kong went for a tie. It's 8-all. So, yes. Let's hear what Tina and Kathryn thought of the series. Let's start with Tina. Why do you think England did so badly?
Yeah, I think that's the question on everyone's lips, and it's probably difficult to pinpoint one area. I think the fielding has been spoken about a lot. It's been kind of coupled together with the fitness, but the fielding was poor, especially the catching. There was a lot of catches going down, and I think at some point the catching or the dropping of catches was contagious among the England team. But no one really went on to big scores either with the bat, and I think if you're not firing in two of the three disciplines, then especially against an Australia side who are on top form, then you're always going to struggle.
You went to the second ODI, Tina, and a lot of people have said that was a pivotal game because it was a game that England really should have won.
Yeah, they really snatched defeat from the jaws of victory in that one. And I was obviously in the minority at the Junction Oval in Melbourne supporting them. And I was really hoping they'd get it over the line because that was a bit of a turning point, as you say. Before then, they'd lost a few games, but they were still in it, and that almost gave Australia an unassailable lead, and they were in it right until the end as well. Amy Jones, she had to kind of farm the strike towards the end, and she admitted afterwards as well that it's not something she's really done before. And I think a bit of lack of experience or lack of know-how kind of paid the price there for England, and that's where Australia, I think, have been on top of the whole series as well, just their cricketing know-how and experience. And just knowing to play the right shots and bowl the right balls at the right time. And that's what happened at the Junction Oval as well.
Do you think once they went, say, 2-0 down or 4-0 down, it then became harder and harder?
Yeah, it was a bit of a snowball effect. And because the series was so condensed as well, that as soon as you got on that losing streak, as England did, it almost felt like they had no time to recover and they were just kind of rolling with the punches. But at some point, Australia, and we know they can be so relentless, it felt like England, once they just went in that downward spiral, it was really hard to get out of. And that's how it ended up being as well.
You did get to meet fellow fairbreaker Danny Wyatt-Hodge.
Yeah, I did. And it's always great to catch up with Danny. I didn't catch her on the best day because she did get a golden duck on that day. I think it was a great delivery, to be fair, by Alana King. And she had her fair share of great deliveries over the series. But it's always great to catch up with Danny, and she's always in great spirits, regardless of the result. And yeah, she'll be looking to come back strong in summer, and I'm sure she will because she's a great player.
What was the atmosphere like at the Junction Oval?
It was brilliant. The Junction Oval is a smaller ground, so it's one of the out grounds. Of course, they got the honour of playing at the MCG in the Test match, but the Junction Oval, I think there's one small stand or two stands on the one side, but otherwise you just sit on the bank, enjoy the sunshine. Everyone was bringing picnics. There was a lot of families there, a lot of kids. And it was great to just see the atmosphere and soak it all up, and especially seeing how cold it's been in England, just sitting there on the banks, enjoying the cricket in the sun. I think I made a lot of my friends back home in England and Germany very jealous.
All in all, I think what the tournament has taught England is that we now know a standard, a very high standard that we've got to reach. I felt in the overall competition that we didn't really convert any of our chances into, giving us a good positive win, which is what we needed early on in the tournament, either in game 1 or 2. And I think it's taught us that we just need to be a bit more clinical. You've really got to take those chances. We got them all out for 180 in the second game, and that's when you've got to go for the jugular. Then you just can't let anything slip. You've just got to go at Australia, and I think Australia winning that game gave them some sort of boost, a lot more positivity, and I think we sort of like had our heads down a little bit going into the third game. And like I said, when you're playing against such a good side, you just can't let them have anything, because they'll take the positives out of anything. You drop a catch, they'll take the positive from that and go from strength to strength. So, the tournament as a whole, we didn't convert our chances. I think there's a massive competition for places in the Australian team. I feel like Delise Perry didn't really do as much as she has done in the past in the tournament. And then there's just another 3 or 4 players just step up to the mark. Mooney, swans in and cracks some cracking innings. And there's just so much competition for places. Sutherland, batted really well. There's just, I know what it's like from back in the day when you've got Broadfoot and Belinda Clark opening, you get them both out, and Karen Rolton comes strolling in, and it's a bit heartbreaking sometimes, but you've just got to plow away and try and get through them.
So what you're saying, Kathryn, when you lose those first 2 games as a former player, how difficult then is it to gain back some initiative against such a good side as Australia?
Yeah, it's so difficult because you can see they're on an absolute high, and it is very difficult to claw back. Like I said right at the beginning, and they're on home turf, they've got the crowds, they've got incredible support. It's very difficult as England's sort of like the smaller unit in let's say a foreign country to really bounce back, and you just don't know what's going on in the dressing room either. There's all that to take into account that we don't know about behind the scenes. So there's all that for the girls to cope with as well.
So Chloe, what did you think to Tina and Kathryn's thoughts on the series?
Yeah, I think they both spoke really well, and I think their thoughts really on the series are pretty true and accurate. I think the fielding that they highlighted has been highlighted by everybody around social media, the pundits, commentary. I think that's been a big factor of England's performances over the whole series, not just the ODIs or the T20s, but all of it. And just how dominant Australia are, exactly what they said. They show that Australia have got more fight and grit to want to win, or know how to win.
And you, Rosa?
Yeah, I completely agree with what they've got to say. I think the stuff about the standard is crucial, especially the competition for places in the Australian side, because there's always somebody, whether it be within their squad or on the domestic circuit, who's ready to step into that international stage, whereas England just currently do not have that. And it feels like there's quite a lot of complacency among some of the players within that squad, in the terms of they're convinced because they've not got someone waiting in the wings that their place is secure, so there's less pressure to perform in the pressure moments.
You are listening to The Paddock and The Pavilion with Stephen Wallis. Don't forget, you can find this show along with our archive of over 300 episodes on Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, Spotify, or on our YouTube channel. Let's move on to the ODIs then, which began at the North Sydney Oval. First game England lost by 4 wickets, and in that game we already started to drop catches.
Yeah, it wasn't a great start to the Ashes series, was it? With the standard in the field straight away. I think as a team, as a unit, you have to go out and have a strong fielding display, and from that first game and then onwards, I think it just they let the girls down, the rest of the team down.
And Rosa, was the pivotal game, as both Kathryn and Tina pointed out, the second match at the Junction Oval?
100%. I feel like that loss of momentum was massive to dictating the Australian high for the rest of the series. I think as a side, when you turn around a game to that extent, it's always going to boost you. And quite frankly, I don't think Australia needed boosting anyway. They're pretty damn good without it. And it definitely felt like it wounded the England players, which made coming back from that game even more difficult.
Chloe, when you get a side out for 180 in an ODI, England really should have won that game.
Yeah, 100%. When you're bowling the team out for 180 and you can't chase that in the 50 overs, there's a serious issue underlying, and it literally, we saw it all throughout the rest of the series. Then problems just started to show, and definitely it stemmed from that game that we couldn't chase 180.
And that was the game, Rosa, where Alana King came to the fore with 4 wickets.
I mean, she was pivotal for Australia in that Ashes series, and it's quite nice to see her given those opportunities, because I think she's a player who's definitely suffered in recent years from how talented that squad is. I mean, she's really struggled to get in at times, despite the fact that she'd probably be one of the first names on the English side's team sheet. So her performances in the series and in that game were definitely pivotal to their overall success.
And then in the final ODI, we again had chances because we had Australia at 59 for 4.
Yeah, I think obviously that was Ash Gardner's day, wasn't it, where she saved Australia and went and got her first 50 ODI, 100. And yeah, stood out really. It just proved that we weren't clinical enough to bowl them out for a low score. We let them get away and they carried on.
And Rosa, that was the day when Ash Gardner took that incredible catch as well.
It was. I think she definitely took that momentum from her batting into her fielding. And I think as well, building on what Chloe said, that kind of shows the depth of the Australian side and how deep their batting order goes. I mean, she was batting, I got here, 6, and even Talia McGrath after her got 50. You know, like they bat deeper and deeper and deeper, I swear, every single series, yet it feels like England on the flip side, their tail is getting longer.
Yes, Australia 308 for 8, and Georgia Wareham scored 38 off 12 balls.
And my question to that is, who in the England team has stepped up in lower down in the order to score those runs for England? We saw it all through the series, whether that's T20, 50 over in the Test. The lower order, unfortunately, just didn't step up, and that just shows the strength and depth in the Australian side.
We then moved on to the T20. Had both of you given up hope then when England were 6-0 down?
I'm going to be honest, I didn't really watch the ODIs because I was doing exams. So although I had heard and I could see from the scorecards how bad it was and I'd seen the highlights, I didn't until I actually watched the first T20 appreciate how bad it had been. So I wouldn't say I had lost hope before those T20s, especially given the comeback in 2023. But as soon as I saw that first T20, I knew that we were in a lot of trouble.
And you, Chloe?
I mean, I caught glimpses of the ODI series, obviously, because it was so late at night. I'm committed to watch the T20s, but yeah, was watching it probably with my hands over my eyes. Watching the exception, like Australia absolutely smash it.
The second ODI, we did run them quite close. We only lost by 6 runs on the DLS, but at the Manuka Oval. But did you think that Heather Knight would have got those 18 runs off 5 balls? A big ask.
Look, I have a lot of respect for Heather Knight, but I think it was unlikely. And I understand her frustration, and I understand why she probably in that moment was like, I was going to get those runs, but they left it too late. And the thing with T20 cricket is when you're playing a side who have the talent which Australia have, you can't be needing 18 runs. It's too much to do.
The third T20 was probably one of England's worst performances of the tour. Heather Knight, last person out on 40, and England bowled out for 90.
Yeah, it was pretty exceptionally bad, let's be honest. And I think, especially when you've just watched Australia bat so well on that wicket, so it clearly wasn't the pitch, and the pitch didn't really deteriorate during that game either. It just felt like, I don't know, I guess when you're so far behind, I guess even sometimes the small totals and the achievable totals feel impossible. And when you get off to such a bad start, and as Chloe said, the bottom end of the batting order just was not backing up. You can't be relying on your middle order. And throughout the whole series, it felt like there was a collapse at the top, which then left way too much to do at the end.
It was that bad in the third T20 that Beth Mooney got more runs in England.
Yeah, that's definitely not a stat that you want if you're the England girls, is it? It kind of says it all, doesn't it? I feel like it was just poor cricket from what I remember. It was poor shot selection. They were, I guess, at that point, grasping at straws a bit, and it just felt like they made a possible task impossible through the way they approached it, and that's probably just testament to how the rest of the series was going and the lack of momentum.
So we went into the first Ashes test, a pink ball test at the MCG, the first one at the MCG since 1949. 12-0 down. We left out Charlie Dean. Was that the right decision?
I think the squad selection throughout the whole series has been, in the politest way, a bit of a joke. Really, I think as fans, we want to see the best 11 out on the pitch, and going from the 50 over to the T20 to the test, did we even have the best 11 throughout each of the series? That would be my question, I guess, throwback to both of you.
Well, Rosa, you highlighted in our preview of the series that England's rotation policy left a lot to be desired.
100%. I mean, in that ODI series, they kept the same 11 throughout. And you're looking at these results and you're thinking, Jon Lewis, I mean, he spent the whole build-up to the series complaining about how close the games were to each other and the turnaround of the games. So they took a bigger squad than usual. Yet you've only got 11 players in that squad who you're trusting to play in those one-day internationals, even though there are a couple of them who really weren't performing. And I think that says a lot more about the coach than it says about the players, because the players don't control when they're on the pitch. But they definitely, at times, were a little bit too complacent when they were on it.
On the pitch in the Test match, it started badly and got worse, really. On the first day, England were bowled out for 170 and Australia overnight were 56 for 1. You could almost know the result after the first day.
Yeah, I think Australia made that wicket look completely different to how England made that wicket look. Just their shot selections, their calmness, their composure with the bat, even in the field with the ball, like they knew exactly where they wanted to put the ball, the delivery, their field, and they backed each other up. Whereas England out there, they didn't look like the team that wanted to be there. They looked like they were done and dusted and wanted to go home, which obviously is understandable when you go into a Test match 12-0 down.
Yeah, one thing you can easily forget is how quickly the tour sort of evolved. It started and it's finished, hasn't it?
Yeah, the length of the Ashes series, I think it certainly isn't one as a fan that we want to see it that short. I think it was great when it was over in England and we had it side by side with the men, and it's unfortunate that Australia couldn't do the same with the men's Ashes later on in the year and have the women side by side with them.
But Rosa, if day one was bad, day two was even worse.
Yeah, I mean, as far as days in Test match cricket go, it's not how you want it to go. The one thing I will say is I think England definitely missed Kate Cross. And I don't think, even though she went into that tour injured, there wasn't really an appropriate backup for her within that squad. And that made it quite a difficult task because she is one of the, I wouldn't say Test bowling specialists because the women don't play enough Test matches, but she is one of the more reliable bowlers. And I just think Australia knew completely how to manipulate the England bowlers into their own hands.
But Rosa, should Kate Cross have been selected? Did they not know her medical condition better than selecting her in the first place?
From what I've heard, she was fully fit. Just didn't have much game time under her belt, so it would have been a risk to pick her. But on the other hand, I guess she probably would have wanted to play that Test match if you'd let her. And it's a really difficult balance when players are coming back from an injury because obviously you want to protect them, especially a player at Kate Cross at the stage of their career that Kate Cross is at. But on the other hand, sometimes it's worth taking those risks, especially when you've not really got a second plan.
What are your thoughts on that, Chloe?
Yeah, I mean, I think I said it from the start how important Kate Cross would be in the test and obviously in the ODI, and she definitely was missed. She's someone with control with the new ball, and that's not disregarding Lauren Bell, because I think she had an excellent series with the ball. But I think obviously throwing young Rhiannon McDonald-Gay into a second test, and that was in the Ashes, it's a big ask. And I mean, she stepped up and did very well, and she created chances. But when you've got someone like Kate Cross in your team with that experience, and she's not in, she's someone you're going to miss.
Yes, we mustn't forget in the test match, although Australia scored 440 and Annabelle Sutherland 163 and Beth Mooney 106, England did drop 7 catches.
I mean, I think England's fielding has been probably one of the biggest headline makers, not just over the Ashes series. I'd say for the past 12 months, I think it's one of the problems which, when you're playing, I don't want to say smaller nations because that's not true, but when you're playing teams who aren't Australia, it kind of gets brushed under the mat a little bit because there's less pressure in those moments and there's less pressure surrounding those drops. Like, for example, in the New Zealand series, the fielding was just as bad, but because they were presented more opportunities for wickets, that wasn't particularly apparent. And I feel like it's in those pressure moments where these overhanging issues have become even more highlighted.
England then bowled out for 148 to lose by an innings and 122 runs. Alana King getting 9 wickets in the match and becoming the player of the series.
Yeah, she deserved that. She bowled exceptionally well in that test match and just proved how important it is to pick that leg spin option in a test match, which England never seemed to do. I can't remember the last time Sarah Glenn played a test match, or if she has even played a test match, or create another spin option of Lindsay Smith was over with the side. Why didn't we give her an opportunity?
Rosa, anything more to add about the test match?
Yeah, for sure. I think the biggest lowlight of that test match for me was Jon Lewis's interview post-playing. And I think at that point, he was speaking to Ebony Rainford-Brent and Tash Farrant. And Ebony is a member of the ECB board. She has a very key part to play in the discussions of his future. But his response to questions was baffling. I mean, he was asked if he still thought he was the correct man for the job. And there was almost this naivety, and I'm not saying in terms of backing himself, which is fair enough. I mean, you would do if you were in that position. But it was some of the claims he made. And I think the biggest one for me was he highlighted that one of the biggest successes he's had since becoming coach is implementing young players. And that's not true. And I mean, we see it with McDonald-Gay, for an example. Yes, she was in the squad, but she just played in the test match. She didn't play in the rest of that series. The average age of England's squad, I think, was 27 during that Ashes series. But he's also done the polar opposite. I mean, there's been a borderline mistreatment of younger players, especially in the bowling department. We've seen major injuries to Freya Kemp and Mahika Gore because of their workload, which was mismanaged. And we've also seen the mismanagement of Izzy Wong rather significantly, especially in the last Ashes series, where she followed them around all summer carrying drinks and was their poster girl, in effect. And I feel like it's quite bold to turn around and claim that you're creating this path for younger players when in some ways you're going further to prevent their opportunities.
Whereas Australia in that test match, their oldest batter in the top 3 was 23.
I mean, that says all you need to know, doesn't it? And I don't think it's fair what some people are claiming, that there isn't the talent, there isn't the young talent, because I can probably name 5 or 6 players who could play in that England setup who haven't been given opportunities yet. And it's a balance, because I'm not saying you need to turn around and get rid of all your senior players, because that would be equally as baffling. But they need to feel under a little bit more pressure. They need to feel a little bit less secure. And if you've got younger players running in the wings, bowling at you, trying to take your head off in the nets, I feel like that's all the pressure you need.
Well, thanks for that, Rose. We'll come back to you about what you would like to do now. But for the moment, we're going to bring back Kathryn and Tina for their players of the series and the positives during the series for England.
I think something that did come out of the tournament as positive for us was the fast bowling pair of Bell and Filer. I enjoyed watching them bowl. I enjoyed seeing a bit of what I call Yorkshire grit in them. A lot of determination, and I saw some fire there. And of course, Eccleston is forever consistent with the ball. A couple of dropsies in the field, I think, which is quite unlike her. And I think we should have seen more from Charlie Dean, because I really think she's going to be a key player for England in the future. Another positive that I did see, I feel like Nat Sciver-Brunt really struggled against King early on in the tournament, and in the end, she really got her head down and really watched the ball off the pitch and played King very well. When early on in the tournament she looked a bit out of sorts, as did a few of our players against the leg spin. But King just used the wickets really well to bowl exceptionally well, really.
How impressed were you with Alana King, being a fellow leg spinner yourself?
Yeah, I mean, she an absolute joy to watch. I can't say I was very elegant, really. I don't think I was, but yeah, just that. Again, as I said, it's the grit and determination, and you can sense that she wants to really rip that ball down there, and she puts her heart and soul into everything. And
did England use the sweep too much against her? Should they have been playing straighter against her? Or is that easy to say?
No, I honestly think its best form of attack is a sweep, because you getting the bowler off their line and length, really. They don't know whether to pitch it a little bit shorter or fuller, or you're taking the game to them when you sweep them. You must never let a spinner bowl at you. You must attack them. You can't, especially King, you can't let her be comfortable. You can't, let her be on top at all. And I think Sciver really showed a lot of dominance in her last innings against her. I thought that was really good.
Who would be your player of the series for Australia and, dare I say, England?
Well, there's a few candidates that stand out for Australia. I think if I had to go for one, I'd go for Alana King. 9 wickets in the Test, 11 wickets in the ODI, and I think there's a lot of comparisons made to Shane Warne. I think rightly so. There was that one ball of the century, maybe of this century, so far, and yeah, England just didn't know what to do with her. She was turning it on all the pitches, and yeah, she's got a lot of guile, and yeah, there's a lot of runs scored with the bat, but I think Alana King gets my vote. And I think for England, it's tough to pick out any one individual. I think all the players were maybe a bit under par. I know Sophie Eccleston got a bit of criticism for her fielding, but she still stood up tall with the ball, and she'll be on that leaderboard for her 5 at the MCG for all of time. So no one will ever take that away from her, and her 7 wickets in the ODIs as well. So even when England weren't necessarily picking up a lot of wickets, it was always Sophie Eccleston who was chipping away. And yeah, I think she probably gets my vote, but it's tough. I think the top 5 performers, if you did a mixed team, I think the top 5 would probably all be Australians, because they were just so dominant.
Rosa, it's hard to find an England player of the series, but there were some positives.
There were, for sure. I mean, my two standout players, not including Sophie Ecclestone, across the series were probably Amy Jones in the ODIs. I don't think she's got her flowers particularly for the shift she put in with bat. And I mean, don't get me wrong, she'd probably like to have scored more than 30 odd in those games, but those runs were still pretty crucial. But the other one, and the more significant one for me, Sophia Dunkley in the T20s. I think the way she came out and made a point, especially after kind of coming in and out of that team quite significantly over the past year. I mean, she scored 59 from 30 in the first T20 international and 32 from 22 in the second. So, you know, that's definitely quite a significant performance. But I would agree with Tina and say Sophie Ecclestone was probably overall across all three formats the most consistent.
Lauren Bell also put in some good performances.
Yes, she did. 100%. I think there were a couple of games where she was probably, my sister was probably quite cruel in saying this, but after two of the games, they said that Lauren Bell was the only player who could hold their head up high. And that kind of says it all. Especially in the absence of Kate Cross in those ODIs, she was pretty crucial and she really held her own.
Chloe, who stood out for you then for England?
Yeah, I think echoing what Rosa said at the players she named, for me, Bell was up there. I think she had an exceptional tournament with the ball, series with the ball. And it just shows the last Ashes series and the previous series we've seen her, that she's been practicing her in-swing and away swing. And this is the series where it's actually all come together. And she's actually taken ownership of the ball at such a young age. And then just going back to Sophia Dunkley in the T20, just seeing how she came out and performed with the bat after the year she's had. I think that just shows to any young cricketer that even if you get knocked down, you go away, you go back to your regional or professional county cricket now, and you perform to the level that and showcase everyone why you are that good. And she went back out there and put the England shirt on and performed to a level where I think all of us were just saying, wow, fair play, the haters stopped on social media. And I think that's the point you want to get to as a cricketer.
No one wants to see what you've just said about what a player receives on social media. But she did go back to domestic cricket and got runs behind her belt.
Yeah, and I think obviously playing, that's the first time I've ever met her at Southie Stars, so playing and training with her in the same environment, seeing how she goes about her thing, she was like the ultimate professional. And when she walked out onto that pitch and scored the run she did with the bat, it was like, wow, you are a talented cricketer. Now let's go see it in that England shirt. And that's exactly what she did when she got the opportunity in the T20 series.
That must have pleased you as a fellow Southie Stars player.
Yeah, definitely. It's really nice. Always really nice to see a teammate succeed. And obviously Rihanna McDonald-Gay in the test match as well, seeing her perform and getting the opportunity. So yeah, it was great.
Lots of stars, Chloe, for Australia, but who stood out the most for you?
For Australia? Well, I've got two definites. I think obviously Alana King's a no-brainer. With the wickets she took across the white ball and the test series. And then for me, Beth Mooney was exceptional with the bat. And even in the series where she took the gloves to still be able to score consistently. I think she went 4 games in a row, scoring 50 or more. And I think that just shows the level she's performing at, and she's the ultimate professional.
And Rosa, Australia.
Yeah, I completely agree with Chloe. I think, as has been mentioned, they didn't know what to do with Alana King. And I think that probably highlights a greater issue regarding England against spin. But Alana King is a world-class player and definitely really got the chance to shine this series and this complete Ashes series.
Your data is like gold to hackers. They're selling your passwords, bank details, and private messages. McAfee helps stop them. Secure VPN keeps your online activity private. AI-powered text scam detector spots phishing attempts instantly. And with award-winning antivirus, you get top-tier hacker protection. Plus, you'll get up to $2 million in identity theft coverage, all for just $39.99 for your first year. Visit McAfee.com. Cancel anytime. Terms apply.
At Sierra, discover top workout gear at incredible prices, which might lead to another discovery. Your headphones haven't been connected this whole time. Awkward. Discover top brands at unexpectedly low prices. Sierra, let's get moving.
Eczema isn't always obvious, but it's real. And so is the relief from Ebglyss. After an initial dosing phase of 16 weeks, about 4 in 10 people taking Ebglyss achieved itch relief and clear or almost clear skin. And most of those people maintain skin that's still more clear at 1 year with monthly dosing.
Ebglyss, lebrikizumab LBKZ, a 250 milligram per 2 milliliter injection, is a prescription medicine used to treat adults and children 12 years of age and older who weigh at least 88 pounds or 40 kilograms with moderate to severe eczema, also called atopic dermatitis, that is not well controlled with prescription therapies used on the skin or topicals, or who cannot use topical therapies. Ebglyss can be used with or without topical corticosteroids. Don't use if you're allergic to Ebglyss. Allergic reactions can occur that can be severe. Eye problems can occur. Tell your doctor if you have new or worsening eye problems. You should not receive a live vaccine when treated with Ebglyss. Before starting Ebglyss, tell your doctor if you have a parasitic infection.
Searching for real relief? Ask your doctor about Ebglyss and visit ebglyss.lilly.com or call 1-800-LILY-RX or 1-800-545-5979.
Well, thank you both for that. It's now time to find out what you would do now. But I know Rosa's can't wait to tell us what she would do. But before we get a chance to hear her, we're going to go back to Tina and Kathryn. What do you think England need to do now?
Well, that's the big question. It's definitely a case of back to the drawing board. There's been talk of a change of leadership, a wholesale change of everyone at the top. I'd be very surprised, I think, if Jon Lewis keeps his job. I know he was quite defiant and wanted to carry on. It's a big summer ahead, especially with Project Darwin and everything happening on the domestic level for England. So maybe for them, it's a case of the England players going back to their domestic teams as well, getting a lot of experience, being one of the more professional players there. And most of them will be playing now professional cricket, all of them in England as well. And I think that will help England to bring up the level of cricket from below as well. I think we're still maybe 10, 15 years behind Australia, but that's maybe the long-term goal, that England will be catching up with Australia, hopefully, through Project Darwin. And for the England players, they'll maybe get a bit of confidence through playing in the professional leagues in England as well.
You think Project Darwin can lead England back to winning the Ashes?
Well, that's certainly the hope of the ECB. They've kind of put all their eggs in that basket, and I know there's still a lot of question marks and balls flying in the air. So we'll see where those balls land. And I think Tier 1 is taking shape quite nicely, and maybe Tier 2 and 3 still need to be fleshed out a bit. But it's certainly the hope for England that strong domestic structure will improve the international team, because that's exactly what's happened in Australia, and the amount that they've improved on the back of their domestic structure. And of course, the Big Bash has really made their national team kind of go to the next level and beyond any level, I think, of any other team in the world. And that, I think, is a model that England are trying to replicate.
Would you still like to see Heather Knight carry on as captain?
Yeah, I think so. I think she's still got a lot left to give the team. She's proven herself to be a really, really solid leader through so many years. And I don't think one poor run of results, I think we can kind of combine the World Cup and the Ashes, so a poor 6 months, is something that should taint what has otherwise been a great leadership. And there's also then the question of who's coming through. If there were a natural successor who could just step right into those shoes, then I think maybe we'll be having another discussion. But of course, Nat Sciver-Brunt's name is thrown about. I don't know if that's the right call. She's England's arguably best player, and there's always an argument against making your best player the captain. We saw kind of how that worked with the England men's team with Joe Root and him being freed after taking away the captaincy. So I think for now, with no clear successor, Heather Knight should keep it, and then maybe England should be planning for the short to medium term future about who's going to come in next.
What do you think England should do now? Been lots of talk of changing captains, changing the captain, changing the coach, players.
Yeah, I think we need to be really careful with what we do now. I think it'd be very easy to be off with their heads with a few players, and I don't think that's the right approach on this occasion. There's some big tournaments coming up. There's the World Cup in India, and then we've got the T20s here next summer. I just we're not bad players. We know that we don't have a team of bad players. We've just played badly, and I'm not making excuses, because I think they need to stand, look at themselves and say, right, what happened? What did I do wrong? How do I need to lift my game so we all can individually compete against the Australians? I wouldn't even go as far to get rid of the coach if the girls are confident in him. I just think, in cricket and in life and the workplace, it's very easy just to blame someone and say, right, we've got rid of that person. We can get on with it now and win all the other tournaments. I don't think they should have that approach. I think they need to be clinical in finding out what exactly went wrong and keep the hub of players. I think Heather is just a fantastic captain, and I feel it's not her time to go yet. There's some, like I said, Charlie Dean coming up through the ranks, who I think could make a terrific captain, but is not ready. Particularly taking that role under pressure. A lot of the girls just don't seem to be able to play well when there's a lot of pressure on them. They always seem to rely on, Knight, Siverbrunt, Jones. Those younger girls really need to sort of working and playing well under pressure.
How do you do that? How can you play better under pressure?
I'd play more cricket where you're under pressure. I think they need to realise that some of the younger girls coming up, there should be competition for places. I think that's always something that can give a player who's underperforming a boost. Yeah, there just needs to be a lot of soul searching, I think, and honesty within themselves.
It's always good to get a few different opinions. Rosa, what would you do now?
I would do a lot now.
The floor is yours.
I don't necessarily agree with the statement that because there's big tournaments coming up, they shouldn't be too radical. I think that's why they should be radical. I think sometimes you kind of need to bite that bullet. And first of all, let me be very clear in this. Jon Lewis, in my opinion, needs to go. He's had the team now for long enough to not have fixed a lot of these issues, which are still so present. And I'm not going to turn around and say that Heather Knight should be forced out. I think she's still got a lot to give in an England shirt, but she's been captain since 2017. She's won one World Cup, come close to the Ashes series, and not really much else. I mean, yes, she's given a lot to the team, but I don't think it's accurate to say she's been an incredible captain, because England haven't really achieved under her. And you also can't really... I've seen a lot of members of the media say that she kind of gets handed the team she gets given, and she doesn't have any control in it. Well, that's also not true, because she, of all people, as a captain, one of your responsibilities is, A, she has a say in the squad selection, and B, especially when it comes to younger players, it's your job to implement them into the squad. It's your job to try and get the best out of them, and it just feels like that isn't happening. And without a complete overhaul of coaches, of a captain, I don't think you can really ever start fresh or make change. I think sometimes you need just a new book.
Who would you go for as the new captain then?
I think that's the difficult thing, and I think that's something which is up for debate. I understand why Charlie Dean is a name who is raised a lot in these conversations, but I think if England want her to be the next captain, they need to find a way for her to captain outside of England, whether that's in the 100. I mean, she's not going to get the captaincy at Somerset. I think Sophie Luff has that pretty secure. But I don't particularly have a problem of Nat Sciver-Brunt holding that role on a very temporary basis if she's the only solution. But I think their best bet is to bring in a young player who could then captain. I'm going to put my Sid from Cricket Her hat on here and say Grace Griffiths needs to at least be brought into the setup. I'm not saying that she should immediately become captain, but players like that are the players who you need to be readying for the future, so you have captaincy replacements when it's time to move on.
Chloe, what are your thoughts on that? Some people actually mentioned that when England went to play in Ireland, they should have given experience of captaincy to a younger player there.
Yeah, so this was actually something I was thinking about yesterday. I think it's quite a key point in the England side, really, that I can't remember where I heard it, but if you look at the Australia side, pretty much all of the youngsters in that squad are captain of a Big Bash team or the what's their Australian league called? Their 50 over and T20 comp out there. And I'm pretty sure they had like a leadership course for the youngsters to go on. Now, if we look over in England at our domestic structure, who in that England side out of that young half of the team is a captain right now? And the current captains are Holly Armitage, she's not in the England side. Georgia Adams, she's not in the England side. Sophie Luff, Bryony Smith. They're not in the England side at the moment. We're not producing new leaders in this England setup. And I think going back to Charlie Dean is a perfect example that she needs to have leadership opportunities at the domestic level, or whoever your next successor is to Heather Knight. Definitely needs to be a leader right now. And someone like Grace Griffiths, yeah, she's in the back of my mind. I think she should be given an opportunity, and that Ireland series was definitely a key moment that she should have gone out there and got that leadership opportunity.
What do you think to the England coach? Do you think Jon Lewis should be replaced?
In the short and sweet answer, yes. As Rosa said, he's been in the role long enough, and what has he succeeded in, and what has he produced going forward? I think seeing that same side in the ODI start of the series wound me up. I think as a coach and a captain and whoever that leadership squad is needs to be having serious conversations about who they can pick as their starting 11 week in, week out. And don't get me wrong, obviously there was lots of negativity towards Sophie Eccleston, but she has got a very good cricketing brain. Now, would she make a good England captain? Personally, I would say yes, but right here, right now, I think she needs a little break from the media or from cricket or from being at the top of everyone's, I guess, news article, news pages sort of thing.
Rose, there was a lot been made about England players playing more domestic cricket. Do you think that's important as well?
100%. You can't improve if you're not playing cricket. And apart from anything else, Project Darwin has been hailed as a way to level up the game. You can't level up the game if your best players aren't playing in the games. The England players don't really have an excuse, I don't think, anymore not to be playing any county cricket. I mean, Alice Capsey is an example. Where was she last season? She should have been playing for her region. And you see in that World Cup and in this Ashes series that she's really struggled to step up off the back of very limited playing time. And even we've seen the benefits with Sophia Dunkley of going back to play the regional game and coming out of it an even better player. And there are a few players in that side. I'm going to name Mai Boucher as an example, who is a phenomenal cricketer and has a lot of talent, but needs to be playing more cricket than she is in order to improve that talent.
And I think you both said during this podcast that players have become too comfortable in the England side.
Yeah, I'd say that's a fair statement. I mean, what competition has the current England contracted players had in the last 3-4 years or even 2 years? We've only seen a couple of players come through and knock on the door in each series, and some of the new girls that are on development contracts are still not even getting an opportunity in that playing 11 where they probably deserve it to showcase what the new talent is or what the new England side might be in 5 years' time.
Anything else to add, Rosa, before we talk about the review that England are going to have, and what should the review be about?
Yeah, just to add on what Chloe said, I think the other thing is sometimes they're picking players for the sake of picking players. And look, don't get me wrong, I'm going to use Bess Heath as an example in this. I think Bess Heath is a phenomenal batter, but as far as wicket keeping goes, I don't think she's the next best bet after Amy Jones. And it sometimes feels like they've picked her because they have to have an Amy Jones backup in the squad. And rather than genuinely investing in her or investing in another young, talented wicketkeeper, they're kind of just ticking boxes. And that kind of aids the complacency of the current players in the squad.
I can say to my new Samsung Galaxy S25 Ultra, hey, find a keto-friendly restaurant nearby and text it to Beth and Steve. And it does, without me lifting a finger. So I can get in more squats anywhere I can. 1, 2, 3.
Will that be cash or credit?
Credit. 4.
Galaxy S25 Ultra, the AI companion that does the heavy lifting so you can do you. Get yours at Samsung.com. Compatible with select apps. Requires Google Gemini account. Results may vary based on input. Check responses for accuracy.
Get the Angel Reese special at McDonald's now. Let's break it down. My favorite barbecue sauce, American cheese, crispy bacon, pickles, onions, and a sesame seed bun, of course. And don't forget the fries and a drink. Sound good? Ba-da-ba-ba-ba.
At participating restaurants for a limited time. Still getting around to that fix on your car? You got this. On eBay, you'll find millions of parts guaranteed to fit. Doesn't matter if it's a major engine repair or your first time swapping your windshield wipers. eBay has that part you need, ready to click perfectly into place for changes big and small. Loud or quiet, find all the parts you need at prices you'll love. Guaranteed to fit every time. But you already know that. eBay. Things, people, love. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply.
Turning then to the review, the much talked about review that Claire Connor, the MD of English Cricket, was talking about. What should that focus on and who should do that?
Oh, that's a great question. I mean, the main focus, I guess, should be on who's going to be the head coach of the side, who can take this team forward, who's going to produce new, talented all-rounders. England needs all-rounders. We don't need one skill set of batters and bowlers. That Australian side was made up of more than half of all-rounders. I think that's why they were so successful. So we need to look at what are we producing in the domestic structure, and being a part of that domestic structure over the years, there's certainly talented cricketers coming through the system that just aren't, I guess, being put through that next stage because of England being too comfortable, in my opinion, that they don't want to make changes. So changes at the top. I guess the questions of Heather Knight and her leadership. But for me, I think, was it Tina or Kathryn that said it? A bit like Joe Root, she should still be in that side. She's got more than enough to give in an England shirt. But is it maybe time to step away from the captaincy and focus on that side? So I guess for me, there'd definitely be the 2 points that would come through.
And Rosa?
I'd agree. I think in terms of who should do the review, there's been a lot of, after the test match in Australia, the ECB put on a press conference for all the journalists with Claire. And a lot of the questioning was about, should there be an independent figurehead in that process? And if I'm entirely honest, I don't think they'd benefit from that as much as people think they would. I think sometimes you need people who are inside and understand the structure to help make that change. I think Charlotte Edwards said she wanted to be a part of that review, and I don't necessarily think that's a bad idea, but it needs to explore, I guess, the failures. Why is England cricket failing? I mean, the ECB have reached a point now where they are investing in women's cricket. They've invested in the hundreds. They're now investing in the new Darwin structure, but they're not using the talent that they're investing in. It's like this almost cyclical error that they've created these new tournaments to create young talent, but then they're just letting the young talent sit there and not be looked at. So there's definitely some of the processes that need to be looked at.
Do we know when this review is going to take place? It probably won't even be done before this podcast gets out.
She said that it would be like 4 weeks, a week after the Ashes finished, so it should be soon. But given Jon Lewis is currently head coaching in the women's IPL, I'm not sure how soon it can be.
Can I hop in on that?
Of course you can, yeah.
Yeah, just on my opinion of who should do the review, and I completely agree with Rosa. It needs to be actually someone who understands the women's game. It's all well and good doing independent reviews of people who are non-biased to the women's game, but I think you definitely need people who actually know the structure of what's going on. And I certainly think every single director of the Tier 1 county teams should be involved in that. They're the directors of these new Tier 1 teams that are producing these new players who they're investing in. They all need to be involved in that and give their opinions on how the game can grow and better for the women's setup.
Is it important that the next England coach has got recent experience of coaching in the women's game?
110%. I feel like one of Jon Lewis's biggest flaws is that he came from men's cricket, especially when we look at the workload issues with the fast bowlers. He just doesn't, from a mental side of the game and also from a physical side of the game, they're so different. And I think there's not that many options, to be honest, in terms of individuals who are currently involved in the women's game, especially given the Blaze have just grabbed Craig Cumming. And I'm not quite sure if Charlotte Edwards wants it yet. I think if she does want it, she will be their first choice any day of the week. And it's really important that there are people coming into this setup who already understand the women's game, because otherwise it's just another barrier that they have to go through before they can help this squad reach their full potential.
Chloe, as someone who has played recently in the women's structure, is that important to you as well?
Yeah, I think certainly you definitely need a coach in that position who has coached the female game massively. I mean, even coaching at my level that I coach at in Pathway, if I have a coach that's never coached in the girls' game, they've come from the boys, it's a big difference. So if we're leaping to the professional and international game, we certainly need a coach who has got the experience of coaching a women's high, either elite performance side of a domestic or an international side, 100%.
Well, thank you very much both for answering that question. Now I've got to see how you've got on with your homework, because I sent you I gave you plenty of notice. I think I gave you 24 hours to select your England team for the first ODI in the World Cup, which I think's in August and September this year. Rosa, in India.
I genuinely think, Stephen, this is the hardest thing you've ever made me do before coming onto this podcast.
I think it's harder for Chloe, bearing in mind she's still in the actual structure in Project Darwin. She's got more on the line than you have.
True. True. Okay. What I've done, and I think Chloe's done something similar, is I've got an 11, but I've got some either ors in there. Would you like me to just go through the 11?
Yeah, just go through it, yeah. Dying to hear it.
Okay, so this is really unoriginal. Opening the batting, Tammy Beaumont. I think she still needs to be up there, especially in the ODI format. I've got Maya Bouchier if she returns to county cricket and is performing and is coping in that 50 over shirt, because I think she has a real issue facing spin, and it's in India. So that's something which has to be thought about. But I've got Grace Scrivens, who should definitely be in the squad to be pushing them. Then Natsipha Brunt. I have, as captain, I have reached the assumption in this 11, and this is going to be controversial, that Heather Knight will not be in it. And I've done that on the basis of I don't think if she's not captaining, she'll play much of a part much longer in the England side. That's up for debate, though. But I've put Sarah Smale in there. Then Danny Wyatt-Hodge, Amy Jones, Sophie Eccleston, Charlie Dean, Kate Cross, Georgia Davis, I've thrown in the mix. I think we've spoken about developing young leaders, and she has just been announced as captain of Warwickshire. and she played an important part in that Ireland series. And I've got Lauren Bow.
Well, thank you very much for that, Rosa. And now your chance, Chloe.
So I've gone similar, but I've kind of got two different 11s, but only with 2 or 3 changes in them. So I'll read them out. So I've gone similar at the top. I've gone for Beaumont and Boucher, but I've also gone for /Dunkley/Scrivens. So with Beaumont, I've gone Beaumont/Dunkley, and then with Boucher, I've gone Boucher/Scrivens. And then 3 and 4, they can play around. They're going to be the same. So either Siva Brunt or Paige Schofield at 3 or 4. And then I've actually kept Knight in one of my sides as not captain. 6 Wyatt Hodge, 7 Jones, and then I've actually put Dean at 8 ahead of Eccleston. And then obviously Sarah Glenn's form in the previous years in ODI, she's been up there as one of the. Oh no, she's 220. No, I want to throw a leg spinner in there, so I'm going to keep Sarah Glenn in there. And then obviously Bell as my main seamer, so only gone for Bell and Siva Brunt as the seam option. Gone quite spin heavy. And then I did have a question mark if Capsy has a good county season, where could we fit her in? And I put her as a potential for Have a Night Out and Capsy in.
In fairness to you both, it was a very difficult question, but the summer ahead against West Indies and India is going to be a very important summer for women's cricket in this country.
Yeah, 100%. I think the way that England approaches those series, I don't mean to be dramatic, but I think it will kind of dictate the direction of this team over the next couple of years. If I was England, I would be really bold and I would bring in some young players and just play them and drop some of the senior players. I think that's what the men did following the men's Ashes drama a couple of years ago, and it worked really well. And that doesn't mean you're turning around to your senior players and you're saying you're out. It just means that you're making some really bold decisions, because there's a lot of younger players, especially from the Under-19 World Cup, which just happened, and the one in 2023, that have kind of been knocking on the door, taking part in the Ireland series, who just need to get involved and play against the top sides like the West Indies and India.
Do you think then in the series against the West Indies, they're playing 3 ODIs and 3 T20s? That's where they should experiment more.
Yeah, for sure. I think it's a really good opportunity, especially in a T20 point of view. I think it's easier to experiment in the shortest form of the game than it is in the ODIs, and it's definitely the more gentle way to bring in young talent. But we need to utilise this incredible bank of players we've got. I can probably name about 20 young players who could be involved in England at the moment. And it just feels like a lot of them are in conversations with England continuously, but it never really gets anywhere. And they're involved in the England A stuff, which kind of becomes redundant if you don't use any of the players from the England A stuff. But we have to be more inventive with the cohort we're using.
Is that how you see it as well, Chloe?
Yeah, definitely. I think these next 2 series coming up, I think we need to see a drastic change in the player pool, and certainly give these young talented cricketers an opportunity. Now, I'm 95% sure that there's an England A against Australia A series happening soon. So I guess from that, it'll be interesting to see what the England squad is we take, who plays, who leads that. And I guess from that, who will then come into the main England side for those series. And I could probably name 5 or 6 that should be knocking on the door in that first team.
Because we mustn't forget that India will be tough opposition.
Yeah, definitely. And especially in their conditions, it's not going to be the easiest. So if we've struggled in Australia's conditions, we best knuckle down and sort our fielding out ready for India's conditions.
Oh, you're getting ahead of yourself there. I was thinking also of this summer when India are over here in England.
Oh, yeah, both. Yeah, we've also got to knuckle down our fielding as well back in our country in English conditions as well. We've got to be on our A game now. We've got to, I guess, sort of in quotes, shut the media up and be polite and say, no, we are a good field inside. We are a good fit. We are fit. And this is what we can do. And this is the talent we produce.
Because I was hearing the other day that ticket sales for this summer are very good.
Yes, they have been. Edgbaston, as an example, for that T20 International versus India, is selling very quickly now. And it feels a little bit like every summer now we have the Ashes effect mixed in with the Women's Euros effect. And we really need to build on that, because if you don't put on performances that are of a high quality and make people want to come back, it's going to make that World Cup, that home World Cup, a little bit complicated, because the way you get the country involved is by competing in the run-up to that.
Well, thank you very much to you both for reviewing this Ashes demise for England. It wasn't a wow competitive series, Rosa. Can I just, from both of you, have your final thoughts on the Ashes series?
I think the two words that come to mind are steamrolled. And I think we kind of need to turn it into a positive thing. And I know that sounds probably a little bit crazy, but the best thing that England can do now is work out how they can use it to improve, because they can't get any worse. This is the one good thing from the Ashes series. It quite literally cannot get any worse than that. So it's about how we now build up and gear up ahead of more and more and more World Cups in the next couple of years.
Things can only get better, Chloe.
Yeah, definitely. And I think just on your point there of just trying to describe that Ashes series, I think disappointed and deflated would come to mind as my two words for England. But also, if I'm looking at how Australia played, I think they just set the bar extremely high for women's cricket and set the standard to where England need to be and need to get to very, very quickly going forward.
Well, thanks again to both of you. It's been long, but it's been very enjoyable, and we must do this again.
Yeah, definitely. It's been great. Thank you both.
Thank you for having me. It's been really good to chat to you both.
This podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.